believers, and welcome to another edition of Everything Weird, Nothing Normal. Today, I want to talk about all the bug shit stuff that goes on in the world, especially paranormal bug shit stuff. So, right, today I want to talk about the Dyatlov Pass incident, the mysterious 1959 tragedy that left 9 people dead. Okay, it's not a nice story, and they were very young as well. That makes it more tragic. The reason it's mysterious and the reason people still talk about it today is because it's weird. Okay, so I am going to tell you the story. In January 1959, 23-year-old hiker Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov led a journey to reach the peak of Otorten, a mountain in the Ural, Soviet Russia. So in the northern Urals of Soviet Russia. The young man brought a team of 8 experienced hikers, many from the Polytechnic Institute, along with him for the adventure. So they were all friends. Before he left his trip, he told his sports club that he would send them a telegram as soon as he returned. But sadly, that telegram was never sent, and the hikers were never seen alive again. Now, I'm going to put a picture behind me. There you go. There's the picture. That's a picture of them hiking. Okay. And they're making their way through the snow, obviously. Now, this is where it turns sad and extremely weird. Their bodies were found in the weeks coming. Remember, there was 9 of them. Their strange and gruesome injuries left investigators baffled. Some were missing eyes, another was missing a tongue, and many were struck by a force comparable to that of a speeding car. Now, this is where it gets weird. All right, I will read that again. Many were struck by a force comparable to a speeding car. Now imagine the impact that takes to be hit with something comparable of a speeding car. They didn't have any petrol ski motors or anything like that. They were just hikers. That was it. Now the Soviet government, they closed the Dyatlov Pass quickly and offered only thin explanations, saying the hikers died of hypothermia, right? But with the explanation clearing up none of the lingering questions, it left amateur sleuths and amateur investigators puzzling over this mystery for 60 years. Now, some experts claim to have solved the mystery with their own theory about a special kind of avalanche. However, questions still remain, and we still don't know what happened on that snowy mountain all these years ago. Now, based on what was recovered from the camera and the diaries discovered at the side of the hikers' deaths, investigators were able to piece together, and on February the 1st, the team began to make their way through the then unnamed pass leading to Otorten. As they made their way, they were hit with snowstorms that ripped through the pass and made visibility hard, and they lost their sense of direction. And instead of moving towards Otorten, they accidentally deviated west and found themselves on the slope of a nearby mountain. The mountain is known as Kolotsinkel, and to the locals and to the indigenous people, it means Dead Mountain. Okay, so that's where they ended up. Now, it's on this solitary mountain that all 9 hikers would meet their demise. And I think it's bearing in mind how young these were. I will tell you anyway, of course I will, but it just highlights the tragedy, really. Now, here is a picture of some of the hikers before tragedy struck. Now, the young lady, her name is Jubinina. Okay, the one with his arm around her shoulder is Krifnishchenko. All right, the one next to him with his head laughing is Firebox Brignoles. All right, and the last one, the one cuddling him for some reason, is Slobodin. Slobodin is, and he's the one grabbing the waist. Sadly, in this photo, they all look like they're having a great time and they're really up for the trip. Now, when the 20th of February rolled around and there was still no communication from the hikers, a search party was mounted. The volunteer rescue party tracked through the Dyatlov Pass and found the campsite, but no hikers. So the military and the police were sent in to determine what happened to the missing team. Now, when the investigators arrived at the campsite, the first thing they noticed was the ripped open tent. And I'm going to put a photo there. There's a ripped open tent. that would soon to be proven to be being cut from the inside. Meanwhile, most of the team's belongings, including several pairs of shoes, had been left at the camp. So when these people did a runner, they left their stuff, or a lot of their stuff. Now, as I say, picture of the tent, there it is. They had discovered 9 sets of footprints from the team, mainly made from people not wearing any shoes or socks, and heading towards some woods almost a mile away from the camp, and you can see the woods from the camp. At the edge of the forest, the investigators found the remains of a small fire and, sadly, the first 2 bodies. Now, their names are Yuri Krivninchenko, he was only 23, Yuri Dorshenko, and he was only 21. And bearing in mind, despite temperatures going on to like minus 22 on the night of their deaths, both men were found shoeless and wearing only underwear. Then they found 3 more bodies. Now, these 3 bodies looks like they were heading back to the tent. One is called Dyatlov Zinada. Then you've got Kolmographer and Rustin Slobodon. Okay, they died on their way back to the camp. Now, while the circumstances were odd, and they are odd, investigators found that the cause of death was clear. All the hikers, they said, had died from hypothermia. Their bodies showed no indication of severe external damage beyond what had been inflicted by the cold, and we know that isn't true. However, this didn't explain one of the hikers, Dorshenko. He was brown and purple in complexion and had a grey foam coming from his right cheek and grey liquid coming from his mouth. Now, I've read up on this a lot, and that's the first time I've ever heard that. Meanwhile, Slobodon had head injuries consistent of someone falling and hitting his head over and over and over again. So think about that. Head injuries. There must have been a lot of head injuries there. Now, Kolmographer had a baton-shaped bruise on his head. These 2 hikers, as well as the others found at this point, were also undressed and wearing each other's clothes. So, I mean, if you imagine you're going to run away from your tent, okay, and you're in a panic, then I would understand that all you do is you grab whatever you can and you put it on. So maybe that's why they were wearing each other's clothes. It's only a suggestion, obviously. Now, this suggested that they left the camp quickly and without adequate preparation into the freezing night and into the freezing cold, despite being experienced hikers. It doesn't ring right, does it? And that's why we're talking about this. It doesn't ring right. It wasn't until, and this is the creepy stuff, it wasn't until the 4 other bodies were found 2 months later that the story takes a really strange turning. Now, these hikers were found 75 metres deep into the woods, and their bodies told an even more chilling story. I'm going to tell you, bear in mind, these are human beings, okay? I know it's 60 years ago, but it's still sad. So you've got 5 box Brignoles. He suffered massive skull damage in the moment before his death. You've got Dubina and Solitariova. They had major chest fractures that could have been caused by an immense force comparable to a car crash, and that's what I was speaking on about. Those 2 poor people, whatever hit them, had the force of a speeding car. They also found the body of Alexandra Kolfatov in the same location, but without any of the same severe wounds. So they found him, but, he didn't have anything wrong with him. The Soviet government closed the case quickly and gave only vague causes of death, and speculated that the hikers' own incompetence may have caused their deaths, or that a natural disaster was the culprit. Early on, many suspected that the hikers' death were the result of an ambush by the local Menzi tribe, as a sudden attack would account for why they left the tent so quickly. But, to be fair, that explanation fizzled out quickly for 2 reasons, right? The Mansi people are largely peaceful, and they were only footprints of the 9 hikers. There was no other footprints. So the evidence didn't match up. The investigators then conceived maybe it was an avalanche. The sound of snow collapsing, an early warning sign of an avalanche, would have frightened the hikers out of their tent. An avalanche would have enough power to cause the injuries to the second group of hikers, their chest injuries. But the physical evidence of an avalanche wasn't there. And locals familiar with the terrain said that the natural disaster wouldn't have made any sense. And also, this is important, if there was an avalanche, it would have buried the bodies. They found the bodies pretty much laying on fresh snow. So that evidence didn't add up. With official theories leaving lots to be explained, there are a lot of conspiracy theories knocking out there, if you can imagine. So I'm going to go through some with you, right? Some try to explain the hikers' strange actions and lack of clothing to hypothermia. And you think that makes sense, okay? Hypothermia can make you feel overheating and it can make you act irrationally. But that doesn't explain why they all left the safety of their tent, because if one or two were showing signs of hypothermia and they were being irrational and they started taking their clothes off, their friends would have been there to help them out. So there's a few question marks on that one. Now, there's another theory that maybe they were more than just friends, and that's why they were in their underwear. And they might have started arguing. It might have been jealousy. There is a history of dating between them. But their friends and people who knew them said that just doesn't make sense. And also, it doesn't explain the beyond human force used to break the poor people's chest. So that doesn't add up either. Now, there's obviously KGB theories. Of course there is. Government theories. Were they responsible for their deaths? There's another theory that maybe it could have been an escaped convict, a nutter, forgive my terminology. But like I say, there was only their footprints there. There was no others. And that still doesn't explain the beyond human damage. So some began to post non-human assailants. So 50 kilometres away from the Dyatlov Pass, there was another hiking gang, obviously 50 kilometres, a long way away. They didn't know each other. And they reported seeing weird flying orbs that night that would suggest maybe there is a UFO connection. And that is why I'm telling this story. Okay, now they did see flying orbs. Now, were they accidentally killed by orbs or UFOs, or were they intentionally killed by orbs or UFOs? Yeah, it's a bit spooky, that one. There was an investigation into the theory and an interview done by a Russian paper back in 1990. But because of security and the USSR, their insistency on privacy, he had to drop the line of inquiry. He wasn't allowed to carry it on. Some are saying that they died at the hands of a Yeti. That out of all of these, that kind of makes more sense to me. Imagine, right, because a Yeti is powerful enough to do the damage that's been done. Imagine if some shot off in one direction, some shot off in another. The Yeti decided to go for just one set of the poor people, and that's where they got their chest injuries from. Also, if you'd have heard a growl or a roar and something started shaking your tent, you'd be out of there, wouldn't you? So that isn't a bad theory. It isn't. Other sleuths mentioned the fact that there was a small amount of radiation detected on some of the bodies. And that would go with the UFO theory, because apparently UFOs can give off radiation. But there is a link that one of them or two of them maybe worked near a nuclear facility, so they could have picked the radiation up there. Some say the governments were experimenting with weapons, and the hikers heard the explosions and ran out of their tent. I don't know. I mean, the hypothesis is that they heard the sounds of the weapons that drove the hikers out the tent, and one half of the team got hit by something and obviously got blew backwards. I'm not buying that either. So I don't want to speculate because it is a very sad story. I think the Yeti sounds a good explanation, but sadly we will never know. So there is the Dyatlov Pass story. What do you think? These very young 9 people lost their lives mysteriously. Now, there is a memorial for them, okay, and I will stick that behind me. The memorial is in Mykajolov Cemetery. Remember, this is Russian. Mykajolov Cemetery at Yuga-Churin Boob. Okay, that's where the memorial's held. So, look, thanks ever so much for tuning in. I hate to say it's quite a sad story. It hasn't got a nice ending. But that is the Dyatlov past story. Okay, look, please ring the bell if you can. Like and subscribe. That would be fantastic. And if you do put a notification on, as soon as I do another video, it'll crop up and let you know. All right, well, look, thank you very much. This is Everything Weird, Nothing Normal, talking about batshit weird stuff.